My name is Aki Jarvinen. I work as an immersive technologist in a company called Digital Catapult. I will be sharing some of our learnings and insights from producing a retrospective of virtual reality content from the UK during last year. And I will... So very quickly about the organization that I work for. So Digital Catapult is a non-profit organization, a technology center based in London, in the United Kingdom. We are also in other places in the UK. We basically help UK businesses to adopt new so-called emerging digital technologies, including 5G, Internet of Things, and things like that. I work in the immersive technology team. What that means is that we help UK businesses to adopt virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, all the ARs in the XR space. And I want to mention this because I am a bit sort of feel a bit like fish out of water here, because I'm not in the sort of electronic art or archiving business, if you will. However, we do work in creative industries in many ways. And one of the ways that we do that is through so-called collaborative research and development programs. And the context for the retrospective that I'm talking about here is the Audience of the Future program, which was really a substantial involvement and investment by UKRI, which is a funding body in the UK. And we took part in this program to support it, and we conducted a number of pieces of research that you see here, sort of touching on the whole sort of aspect of what does it mean creating sort of immersive content in the arts, culture, entertainment space, what kind of business models are there, and so on and so forth. And actually the final piece of work that you see here is just became recently available like a month ago, where we mapped the sort of immersive content life cycle, as we call it, from different distribution of opportunities all the way to the challenges of archiving and restoring this kind of work. So that's also the sort of tie into this talk right here. And the second context really to this production was that we have been working in trying to sort of foster the UK creative scene in the immersive space. So over the last few years, we've run 3 cohorts in a program called Creative XR, which is about giving small pots of funding to creative teams to create a prototype in the immersive art space and then showcase it to the public and possible commissioners and exhibitors and so on and so forth. So when we got the chance to produce Immersive Arcade, the retrospective, which you see, and how it was up in Museum of Other Realities through virtual reality in the second picture here, we obviously leverage our experiences with working with creative teams and the whole sort of ecosystem, if you will. And so I'll rather let a video do the talking of what Immersive Arcade actually was. And so let me see, I'll just stop my sharing for a second. I'll share the page with the video. So let's start that, and hopefully this works. So for the next 5 minutes, I think it's worth showing this video, and then I'll summarize some of the learnings. So
of a kind online and in-person exhibition, the best example, the first national collection of 12 of the best examples of virtual reality, VR, and 360 or immersive experiences created in the UK between 2000 and 2020. The collection is being realised by Digital Catapult in collaboration with the UKRI Audience of the Future Challenge. Those who visit the free Immersive Arcade, either at home via a VR headset or at the in-person showcase during the national tour, will emerge into a wide range of experiences in documentary, experiential and narrative genres.
The coolest thing about the Immersive Arcade is giving people an opportunity to see content that has vanished from the public sphere.
Even the people who work in the sector haven't necessarily seen the influential projects that have led us to where we are today, and that's what I think we were trying to correct.
There have been numerous challenges in creating the immersive arcade, from licensing to procurement to working internationally to working through a pandemic, and there was no playbook. This is the first national VR collection ever realised.
All 12 pieces of content had a variety of different production partnerships. They had creative ownership, they have legal ownership, they had different headsets that they were designed for originally, different interaction methods, and how to bring all this under the same virtual roof in the Museum of Other Realities was really a big ask.
You put on your headset and this virtual gallery, it doesn't feel like it apes a real gallery, it feels like it's a thing in its own right.
We wanted to really showcase the breadth of creativity in the UK immersive industry for things like documentaries such as Darren Emerson's Common Ground, as well as more experiential pieces like Charlotte Micklebaugh's Fly.
The Immersive Arcade Tour has been all over the country, and we've been to a wide variety of different locations. We've tried demoing in shopping malls, in community restaurants, in private art galleries and in cinemas to make sure we reach the broadest audience possible.
Today we are in Coventry for the third day of the Immersive Arcade Tour, and as you can see we're in a shopping centre. Big mix of ages, ethnicities, lots of different VR experience levels as well, so really exciting.
You've pitched it as different things, saying like, do you want to try a VR experience? Alternatively, would you like to be an astronaut? Or how do you feel about trying something completely new?
Today we're at Parlour, which is in northwest London. It's a community restaurant and pub. It's a little bit of a different venue. We really wanted to reach out to a different type of people and a different type of audience.
Putting young women into technology is really important just because it's just good to have diversity for a variety of different ideas, being able to reach different audiences because different people know what different people want.
Flight was absolutely fantastic, so real.
It was so fun. I love it.
My favourite experience in Immersive Arcade would definitely have to be BBC Home VR Space Walk. Just because growing up I loved space, I wanted to be an astronaut. Putting people through that experience as well is definitely something I enjoy, watching them panic as they get sent flying away from the ISS.
Fly is an interactive VR experience that takes you on a journey through humankind's relationship to flight.
I flapped my wings and could soar high over the hills of Vinci.
VR is an experiential medium, and I really wanted to instill experiences with this sort of sense of awe and wonder of what it means for humankind to be able to fly.
As a VR creator, you know, one of the biggest challenges is how we get our work out there. People who don't have headsets often don't get to access this content, and it's a real shame because obviously the technology is still quite expensive and is not in everyone's hands. Getting out these new forms of storytelling to a very diverse audience is really crucial, and crucial to think about that in the future in terms of a kind of touring group of venues that can take on this sort of content.
So I think the arcade, it provokes some real questions about how we collect and preserve this form. They're not entirely different from the ones that I think the museums and galleries and cultural institutions have been grappling with other digital forms, particularly say perhaps computer games. But this is a new medium and it does need to be thought about now. What it's done at the moment is created an online gallery, a virtual experience within which is nested virtual experiences, and that's really worked. It's really, really worked. Albeit at the moment that because of the device constraints, we sometimes have to take it out to people, which the Catapults have brilliantly done.
We've been able to show thousands of people around the world how wonderfully rich British immersive content is. And if we can find a way going forwards of making that ever more accessible, then we'll have reached part of our goal.
All right, so I'll try to get to my presentation, which is here. Okay, so now you have a better idea what did we actually produce, and here. And so, yeah, so regarding the sort of premise for this project, obviously, like the institution is involved, ourselves as the Catapult and our funding body, we are not in the sort of archiving space. So it's not within our remit. So therefore, this project was never like positioned as a preservation restoration project, but because the selection that we ultimately displayed was a retrospective, and even if so it sort of became a restoration project, and even if most of the pieces of work actually were more than a few years old, obviously the technology is becoming, some of the technology is becoming obsolete, some of it is developing so rapidly. So we sort of were faced with many of the technical challenges that restoring even older work has to face. And this just basically, I would love to say that, go now and go to the Museum of Other Realities and visit the piece, all the pieces, but unfortunately the showcase is not available anymore. We hope to bring it back in some way or format, but basically what it meant in practice for us when we produced this is that we licensed the pieces for a limited period of time. So each piece was shown for 2 months and plus 1 month as a kind of when all the pieces were there. We also phased the 12 pieces in total into 3 volumes, and that was also like a practical thing. And this all just like in my mind speaks to the sort of commercial reality of restoring this kind of work and making it accessible. So there's not really, the funding has to come somewhere, and we like to pay obviously the creators for their work. So the short paper that I produced for the proceedings outlines these things in more detail, but what I certainly hope is that if there's people in the room, or somebody who is in a position to, for instance, put together a national retrospective, I think our insights are of worth and useful to familiarize with. So I can already say that based on what we did, there was a similar initiative inspired by our work in Canada, not as extensive, but still in spirit very similar. So just to summarize some of the sort of practical concerns and learnings. So what we really learned from this project was that it's not only about restoring the technology and content as such, but there are much more sort of practical, pragmatic things in doing this. So in many cases, it was also trying to restore the creative team that was originally responsible of producing the piece of work. Because as you saw from the video, it was not just that you could launch the original experience, but there was also a chance to sort of customize the space where it was exhibited to the sort of brand, or at least the sort of look and feel mood of the original piece. And we could give that control to the creators if we were able to find them, and if they were able to prioritize this over other engagements. In some cases, we actually we had to make sort of compromises. We wanted to create really what we thought, we had a panel of curators regarding the content of what would be the best, absolutely best solution, selection of British content. But some of the greatest productions, their teams demanded such creative control over how they want the work to be displayed. So our technological constraints with the Museum of Other Realities platform, and at times schedules and all that kind of stuff, we just couldn't give that control. So therefore we couldn't display all the work that we wanted. And even when we could, sometimes it became a very practical, time-consuming issue of chasing access to assets. So in practice, if you look at these projects, the actual pieces of work, they tend to be either like a Unity or Unreal Engine project on somebody's hard drive somewhere. And it might have been like 4 or 5 years since anybody has touched that project. And so they barely even know where it is. And there's not much documentation and stuff like that. So we had situations also where regarding the intellectual property ownership, we had everything in place to launch a new piece of content as part of a volume to the work, but we hadn't found the sort of creative and legal ownership. We hadn't found a person to sign off that contract. So we had to get all those pieces together, even if the sort of technical issues had been already solved. So those are the types of things that you don't necessarily anticipate when you tackle this kind of production, and therefore I think we gained some really useful insights. Finally, even if the actual VR showcase is not currently available, there was always another piece to this project, which is what we call the timeline. So this website, which you can access and where the video also that I showed is accessible from, is a timeline of 20 years of UK produced immersive content. So you can see that, and there's also like I've recently gone to universities in the UK to sort of disseminate these results, and I've designed a creative exercise around the timeline, and you can also find those resources from the website. So with that, I'm done. Thank you.